tragic details about Clint Eastwood.
But before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe and hit the bell so you'll never miss these great stories.
Clint Eastwood is a Hollywood legend with a long list of acting and directing credits attached to his name, including $1 Million Baby, Dirty Harry, American Sniper, Letters from Iwo Jima, Mystic River, and more. According to Biography, the star was born in 1930 in San Francisco, California. He worked a variety of jobs in his youth, was drafted into the U.S. Army, and briefly attended Los Angeles City College before he took up acting. Eastwood began to climb the ladder in the entertainment industry and gradually rose to prominence, achieving critical acclaim for many of his performances in films across different genres. While Eastwood may appear to be a success story on the outside, he's had to endure a number of hardships in his life. For instance, his family life has been far from smooth, and he has often been widely misunderstood in the media. Here's a look at some of the most unpleasant details from Clint Eastwood's life. Clint Eastwood was born to his parents, Clinton and Ruth Eastwood, in 1930 during the Great Depression. According to the book, Clint Eastwood, Movin' On by Peter Douglas, his family was financially sound but did have to confront difficulties during that period. Basically, the Eastwoods had to shift base several times, thanks to Clinton Sr. and his work demands. This meant that they had to adjust to an uncertain life for a large chunk of the actor's early years. In fact, Eastwood later claimed to have gone to 10 schools as a child, but he didn't complain too much. Eastwood later stated, "My father used to remind me that you don't get anything for nothing, and I never questioned that." Additionally, Clinton Jr. was a shy kid who didn't easily open up with his peers, so he wasn't at all pleased when he was pressured into being part of a school play. He later recounted that although the experience freaked him out, the play did help him stop being so shy. Clint Eastwood, according to the book, Clint, The Life and Legend, by Patrick McGilligan, was simply not interested in academia, as his own father had been. Many called Clinton Sr. kind of intellectually lazy. While Eastwood's father performed well as a football player, well enough to play for Berkeley, he didn't put his heart and soul in it. As told by his family friends, Clint Sr. didn't take the opportunity seriously and ended up defaulting in his first year of college. During his own childhood, Clint Jr.'s grades weren't great, and he had to go to summer school to keep up. In fact, his performance was so poor that school officials decided to make him repeat a grade in a bid to help him improve. In high school, Eastwood, who was seen as a troublemaker, was asked to leave on account of delinquent behavior. Ruth Eastwood, his mother, said, "Clint not only wrote an obscene suggestion to a school official on the athletic field scorecard, but buried, sick, someone in effigy on the school lawn." A young Clint Eastwood was in for a surprise when he was drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War. At one point during his time in the Army, Eastwood was on a plane back to San Francisco with an Air Force pilot friend of his when the aircraft malfunctioned and ultimately crashed. As Eastwood told The Hollywood Reporter, he nearly lost his life during the incident. He said, "What was going through my mind was just a stark fear, a stark terror, because, in the first place, I didn't know anything about aviation at that particular time. I was just hopping a ride." This wasn't Eastwood's only brush with anxiety. According to the book, Clint, The Life and Legend, by Patrick McGilligan, Eastwood experienced severe anxiety in the 1970s while dealing with a bronchial infection when he was working on the film, Joe Kidd. Things got so serious at one point that Clint felt like he was dying during those moments. Clint suffered a major setback when he lost his father to a heart attack in the 1970s. As per the book, Clint, The Life and Legend, by Patrick McGilligan, in July 1970, Clint Sr. had been getting ready for a game of golf but never came downstairs. Ruth checked on him and found him in his final moments. There was nothing that she could do to save her dying husband, who was just 64 years old at the time. This was especially hard news to digest for the Eastwood family, as Eastwood's grandfather had been around until he was in his 90s. Clint changed in many ways after his father's death, taking his health a lot more seriously than he used to and staying dedicated to his nutrition and exercise regimen. Film producer Fritz Maines said that his father's death was a massive blow to Eastwood, who couldn't quite wrap his head around the incident. He reflected, he couldn't understand this. It was a personal thing to him, something that had been done to him. He added that it took a long time for the actor to heal and accept his dad was gone. As a public figure, Clint Eastwood has definitely not been spared when it comes to certain controversies. For instance, when he directed the film American Sniper, he attracted a lot of criticism for what some viewers perceived to be a glorification of war. Eastwood tried his best to defend his film in interviews, but his critics weren't necessarily convinced. The director stated that the film certainly has nothing to do with any political parties or anything. These fellows who are professional soldiers, Navy personnel or what have you, go in for a certain reason. According to the rap, what was also greatly upsetting for audiences was witnessing what appeared to be a celebration of the extremist views of sharpshooter Chris Kyle, who was known for saying things like, "The enemy are savages and despicably evil." Kyle was the subject of American Sniper and was portrayed by Bradley Cooper in the movie. Eastwood insisted that the film's vision wasn't interpreted correctly. He told The Guardian that he is against war himself and doesn't support violence. The actor said, "War is one of those things that should be done with a lot of thought, if it needs to be done. Self-protection is a very important thing for nations, but I just don't like to see it." Clint Eastwood has a notorious reputation for having engaged in multiple relationships throughout his life. According to The Independent, in the early 1960s, Eastwood was involved in an affair with a stuntwoman, Roxanne Tunis, who later gave birth to their daughter, Kimber. The actor has fathered a total of 8 kids with different women over the years, per Closer Weekly. As described by The Independent, Eastwood has often seemed incapable of maintaining stable relationships in his personal life. While he was with actor and director Sandra Locke, he was also married to his wife, Maggie, whom he'd been with for some 20 years. And before he broke up with Locke, he began seeing actor Francis Fisher. The pattern repeated itself when he dated Dina Ruiz while he was with Fisher. He has also been known to avoid opening up to those close to him, even some of his oldest buddies. Film producer Lily Zanuck said, "He is what you project onto him. The man you meet is that screen persona but with more depth. His whole value system is based on what the individual can do and overcome."